Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Fintechs World Stage Americas. My name is Ray Rugas, and I am coming to you live from Miami. I am the co-founder of Fintech Americas, a learning, connecting, and partnership platform for banks to help them get to the digital era. And I'm here with my co-host for this segment, Bianca Lopes, which is, where are you today?
Today I'm speaking from Copenhagen, but I'm normally located in Brazil. So I'm excited to go to my corner of the world and see Brazil, Canada, and some familiar faces. So thank you for having me, Ray. And it's exciting to be at the world stage talking about something that's really near and dear at the heart of Talle. Talle was founded about 2 years ago, and we work with the largest brands in the world like Visa and HSBC, creating communication and content in a time where we need to learn and unlearn some behaviors to bring banking to the future.
Well, welcome, and we're very excited to together be hosting 3 different segments here that I hope will give our audience a flavor of the Americas. One of the things that, for those who have limited experience in the region, is that it is ginormous. And one of the characteristics of the region is that every country is unique. It has its own idiosyncrasies and its own approach. So today we're going to, in order to give a broad flavor of what's happening in the Americas, we're going to be looking at 3 different countries. We're going to be looking at Canada, Brazil, and Colombia. And so together, I hope that this would give everyone a good idea of what's happening throughout the Americas in the fintech space.
I think there's no lack of opportunity. We've all seen the ridiculous numbers, and some of the largest unicorns come from Latin America. And I'm a Brazilian proud, and I'm excited to be talking to you about what's happening, not only from a regulatory perspective, but also what is the opportunity. How can we, in this geopolitical changing landscape we live in, create different opportunities for our own startups and actually grow our market? So, Ray, over to you to get us started in this international trip we're going to be taking. And nothing more Canadian than welcoming you to the next phase of our journey.
Well, thank you very much. And so I want to bring on to take a look at the Canadian market and what's happening in that space. I'm going to have 2 speakers join me here. The first one will be Prabhu Hariharan, who is the Counsel and Trade Commissioner for the Canadian Consulate General to the U.S., and then Kundan Shekhawat, who is the founder and CEO of Ascent Business Technology, who will give us together a view of what's happening with our neighbors in the north. But I'm going to start with you, Prabhu. How are you today? How are you guys doing?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you, and it's an honor to be here.
And Prabhu, you are based out of Atlanta right now, correct?
That's right. I am in Atlanta right now. I've been here for about a year now, so 6 months during COVID and 6 months before COVID, which has been interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm a career diplomat, so I've actually spent the last 14 years in places as varied as Afghanistan and Iraq. So this is a real nice change.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that I think this is a nice reward for having been in some of those challenging spots around the world on behalf of the Canadian government. So let's start off in order to get a good idea of what you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing on behalf of the Canadian government and its offices in Atlanta?
Absolutely, it'd be my pleasure. So, as a career diplomat, my role is to sort of advocate for Canada in different realms, be it political, consular, aid, trade. In this particular role I've taken on, I am the Trade Commissioner and Consul who's in charge of foreign direct investment. So my role is to interest companies in southeastern United States, which is, it would be Alabama, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Georgia, and Mississippi, to see if their companies are interested in setting up offices in Canada. And a part of my role, a smaller part of my role, because I'm an FDI specialist, is to also promote Canadian companies' sort of supply chain, their services in the region. So that's sort of my role here. And it's a great role because, no 2 countries really have the relationship that the US and Canada share. It's a very treasured relationship. It transcends politics. It transcends sort of, fashions and trends. It's existed because of shared cultural values, a desire to support the rule-based system in the world, order system in the world. We do $1.5 million of trade a minute with the United States cross-border. So no 2 countries enjoy this relationship. So I'm very lucky to be here and support a relationship I believe in.
Yeah, brothers from another mother, as they say. Correct?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
So the Canadian fintech space is has been really really hot. And can you give us a little bit about what's happening in this space and what particular areas the country's fintechs are really focusing on?
So Canada's always sort of been an innovative country, right? As a country of 37 million people, we're the size of California in terms of population, with one of the world's largest land masses, and arguably great weather or bad weather, depending on how you look on it. We've had to be innovative. So, in general, ICT, fintech has been a natural place for us to be innovative. We have some of the best tech universities in the world. University of Waterloo, McGill, some of the best universities in the world. So we have a ground for innovation right there. And the governments of Canada successively have really focused on, areas such as cybersecurity, ICT, fintech, green tech, artificial intelligence, data mining, blockchain. We've been leaders in these areas. So there's been a concentrated effort to sort of grow Canada's reputation in those areas. And we're seeing some real successes there. You're going to see some of the Canadian companies that are participating in Fintech South. But what I will sort of point out to you is this effort is sort of a congruent effort. It's a planned effort. For example, the Trade Commissioner Service, who I represent in Atlanta, we are sponsoring Fintech South this year for the third time. We're also sponsoring Smart City Expo Atlanta. We're working with Payments 20. So there is an effort to actually sort of brand us in this space because we're very good at it. And that's something that I think we're very proud of. And over the course of our discussion, you'll see some of the companies that are investing in Canada: Microsoft, Accenture, Cognizant. Some real leaders in the field are coming to Canada because we just have the infrastructure to be able to support their needs.
So the Canadian government is, as you just mentioned, been very progressive in terms of helping the private sector develop in this particular space. Can you give us a little bit of insight into some of the programs and how the Canadian government is supporting private industry in developing the fintech sector?
Absolutely. I mean, we've always been an outward focused country just because that's the way we have to be given our geographic location. And we're very lucky to have the United States as a neighbor because, trade becomes so much easier with, a very friendly, as you said, brother from another mother. Let me maybe talk about some of the examples of successes. Between 2015 and 2019, 311 investment announcements were made in the ICT and electronics cluster. So we're talking about a substantial amount of investments in Canada. And the reason for that is a very proactive effort by the government and having policies that are very conducive to companies coming into the country and innovating here. So a couple of examples. Talent pool. While Canada actually does have a phenomenal local talent pool, from top universities at a lower cost than, say, comparable G7 or G8 countries, we also have the ability to bring in talent from across the world in a couple of weeks on work permits. So companies that often have specific talent needs, are able to bring in, say, talent from South Korea or Taiwan or India within a couple of weeks to be able to come and work on a work permit in Canada. And that sort of innovative thinking allows companies to plan and mitigate risk in the long term and retain talent. That's just one example. We have a great tax incentive program that includes research and development, capitalization costs over a shorter time. We have back office transaction incentives in certain cities. So there's a concentrated effort to give tax incentives in specific areas, and R&D being a huge focus in fintech. That is one of the reasons why we're attracting a lot of talent and companies into Canada. We also have great free trade agreements. So if you're establishing in Canada, you have access to USMCA, which is the largest, free trade market in the world, USA, Canada, and Mexico. But you also have access to 51 countries across the world, 2/3 of the world's population, with preferential access, because Canada is the only country in the G7 that has agreements with all other countries in the G7, as well as the 51 countries through Trans-Pacific Partnership in Southeast Asia or through our CETA partnership with Europe. So that also is a reason why a company looks at Canada as its first step in expansion because it just allows it access to other locations. So these are some of the reasons why we're being so successful.
Well, and then you're in Atlanta, and Atlanta is another very important North American market, especially in the payment space. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the Atlanta Canadian connection here and what you guys are looking to accomplish in Atlanta.
Well, Southeastern United States is just a phenomenally beautiful part of the country, and I don't think people recognize how beautiful it is till you actually come here. So from a geographic point of view, it's absolutely gorgeous. Why are we here? It makes sense for us to be here. Both Canada and Atlanta and the United States in general are both sort of innovative entrepreneurial economies. There's a history of that in the countries and the cities, in Canada and in Atlanta. Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver have very similar landscapes in terms of innovation to Atlanta. They're diverse landscapes. They are beacons of diversity and equity. So, culturally, there's a real good fit there. So that's one of the reasons why as well. But there are some great companies here, and Canadian companies are interested in being here. I mean, you look at some of the companies that have headquarters here, right? Coca-Cola, Delta, Home Depot, UPS. UPS is one of our biggest investors. So there's a reason why Atlanta companies are interested in Canada, but Canadian companies are also interested in Atlanta. So we have about 20 fintech companies participating in Fintech South this year. This is our third year sponsoring it. And right after me, you're going to speak to Kundan from Ascent, which is a fintech company that has global footprint that's set up in Toronto as its North America headquarters. I believe you're also.
Let's actually get Kundan in here because I think this is
wonderful.
An opportunity here to hear from him. Hey, Kundan, welcome to the conversation here. Obviously, we've been going on about here the virtues of Canada, and you guys just moved your just established your North American business headquarters in Toronto. Can you first start off and give us a little bit of background on Ascent and what you guys do and where do you do it and who do you do it with?
Sure. Hi, Ray. First of all, it's very privileged to be here with you and Prabhu on this conversation. It's been very interesting to how it happened with Canada. We were a Singapore headquartered firm with our market focus in the Middle East, Asia, Singapore. And the day we decided we were going to launch our North American, market penetration, we set up a US arm, hired a lot of people. And then by the time we were, thinking about how to go about strategizing, getting more people in place and all of that, it just so happened that, somebody referred us to Canada. And after that, there was no looking back. I am now in Toronto, personally moved in there. At the same time, we decided to make Toronto as our North American headquartered. Given the amount of, flexibility that, we got from the government, at the same time, the pace that we wanted to move. We were in the COVID times. It all happened in the last 6 months where things were totally locked down. Nothing was moving in. But for us, everything moved from an administrative visas to getting a structure in place to the company setups. Everything was functional. It's as if nothing had happened in Canada. There was business as usual. So I think all of that gave us a lot of confidence to be in Toronto and get ourselves set up. From a company, yeah, and from who we are, I am the founder CEO at Ascent. With when I bootstrapped this firm a couple of years back, and today we are globally located at all the major locations. We are in Singapore, we are in our research and dev center in India, in Mumbai. We're in Dubai, where we cater to the Middle East and Africa market. We are in New York, and of course now in Toronto. Our focus is fintech. That's been our play. I personally have a background and a lot of history to working with American Express. I worked at Microsoft a couple of years. Today, our focus is, financial controls. We focus on the real-time payment settlements. And the other area that our company portfolio focuses on is on the AI-enabled enterprise resilience. So these are two hot areas that we contribute back to the financial services business as well as to the fintech world.
Well, look, I mean, I think that this is speaks to Canada's strength in the space, that they were able to attract a firm like yours. Congratulations on your incredible success. And I think now we are going to be bringing in my co-anchor for this segment, Bianca, where we're going to go from Canada to Brazil. Bianca,
Thank you
it's
so much.
all on you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, gentlemen. As a Canadian resident for so many years, it's always amazing to hear what Canada's been up to. And now I get to take you a little bit further south to my home country. So for those of you who don't know, Brazil has been one of the countries with the least amount of innovation over the years when it comes to the banking sector. Given that we're talking about fintech, I'm going to spice it up and give you a little bit of insight into what's been happening in our country. So the central bank, for the first time, I would dare to say, in lots of years, under the leadership of Otávio Damaso and some of the great braver warriors of the central bank, have been trying to change the landscape. A lot of us have heard of a concentrated banking environment and a bit of an organized oligopoly with large players. Now things have changed. If you've been following the news, Morgan Stanley and some other large corporations have been publishing reports on a booming fintech scene. That is due to the fact that our central bank is being brave and audacious and bringing regulatory regimes to change. Something similar to our viewers today that might have seen what's happened to open banking in the UK and faster payments in the UK and some other areas like Australia. Brazil's leading that charge today. PIX, the central bank scheme for open and interactive and fast payments from all the way from peer-to-peer to banks, has actually just taken place as we speak this past week. The central bank hasn't stopped there. With a legislation that is LGP, which is the equivalent of the Brazilian's GDPR, we're talking about data and ethic issues. And it's my pleasure to actually invite somebody to talk about the importance of the cross-sector collaboration and the role of the government in this process, and give us a little insight other than my comments around the audacious country that is trying to change the face of regulatory landscape. Carlos Henrique de Abreu is our consulate of Brazil representing Atlanta today. Carlos, please join me in this wonderful event to talk about our beloved country.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's a great pleasure.
I love it. I said to Carlos, guys, when I first joined in on our prep call on backstage in today's world, when we're living in people's living rooms, I saw the Brazilian flag and an instant wave of just sunshine comes through. So hopefully you're feeling that on the other side. Tell us a little bit about your role as the general consulate. I know you have a lot of agendas, but talk to the team and to the people listening out there a little bit about what is the state of fintech and what can people think about when they think of opportunity? Because we've kind of diminished our soccer reputation a little while ago. So let's build our fintech reputation now.
Yeah, but our women's soccer team is doing great.
I know, right? Girls to the rescue, as most industries, as I would say.
Yes, yes. Well, as you said, I'm the Consul General of Brazil in Atlanta. I have under my jurisdiction the states of Alabama, North Carolina, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Georgia. And
wow, that's a big span. That is a big span in the U.S. So now connecting that to Brazil, what is some of the role and what do you do when it comes to fintech? What can people think about?
Well, let me just say that first that as a Consul General, I'm supposed to look for the interests of the Brazilian citizens in my jurisdiction, including businessmen. And I have a very active in the trade promotion department here in the Consulate General. Let me give you perhaps some background on the Brazil's fintech industry. Well, Brazil has become the largest fintech ecosystem in Latin America and in the Southern Hemisphere, with 771 startups, according to a recent survey by Radar Fintechs, and the future looks even brighter. As you know,
couldn't agree more. And it's all happened in 2 years, which is kind of crazy. In the past 2 years, we've seen that over 300% increase.
Yeah. Well, Brazil has a solid competitive banking system, and its financial service industry as a whole has been very and heavily advanced in the use of technologies. Today in Brazil, we have 13 categories of fintechs. Payments with 28% of the total, financial management, 18%, loans, 17%, then investment, insurance, funding, cryptocurrency, and DTL, TechFin, multi-service, debt negotiation, digital banking. I'm missing something. Yeah, exchange and remittance and financial efficiency.
We have problems enough for enough fintechs to be in the marketplace.
No, but Brazil has been taking, I think, the necessary steps to adapt the regulatory environment and strengthening
Couldn't agree more.
and to build capacity for the full realization of its fintech potential. Well, recent open banking regulations, for instance, will allow startups to be in a better position in terms of financial data access and credit analysis of potential customers. Many of the Brazilian fintech companies already operate with leading-edge innovation solutions to fit the Brazilian market and can certainly address the needs and opportunities in other markets as well, as you have highlighted, Bianca. Products like buy now, pay later, payroll-based loans that have only recently become hot products in developed markets have been mainstream in Brazil for many years. One last aspect I believe is worth mentioning is the extremely active market for neobanks and challenger banks in Brazil. Indeed, the largest neobank in the world, Nubank, is Brazilian. This might
I know, pretty proud of David and Cristina Junqueira for changing the landscape on building that digital bank a few years ago. It's really cool.
Yeah. This might serve only as a testimony of the great potential of Brazil's fintech industry. Besides Nubank, other Brazilian startups are among the most promising fintech companies in the world. Conta Azul, Contabilizei, the names are in Portuguese. Creditas, Ibanche is not really Portuguese. Gorilla Investment, Guia Bolso, Neon, Quinto Andar, Toro Investments, and let me see my list, Sherpa. And Creditas is seen as a fintech that can reach or exceed $1 billion in value. In a recent study by the Brazilian Association of Fintechs and PricewaterhouseCoopers, the 5 main technologies that Brazilian fintechs intend to master in the future are artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, data analysis, biometrics and identity management, cybersecurity, and mobile, among others. Moreover, Brazil has a national payment system that has provided infrastructure for online real-time settlement of interbank transactions nationwide for more than 18 years, since July 2002. Bear in mind that Brazil is larger than continental USA. And as you said, Bianca, at present, Brazil is launching the PIX program, which will provide the same infrastructure for P2P transactions, peer-to-peer services, regardless of interbank intermediation. As of yesterday, Bianca, more than 3 million PIX accounts were registered, according to the Central Bank of Brazil. The PIX program will be fully operational from next November 16 on. Brazil is considered to have one of the most modern fintech regulations in the world. Indeed, it was developed through a joint initiative of the financial service sector, technology incubators, and the entrepreneurial community. And on the other hand, regulators themselves, both banking regulators and consumer protection bodies. FEBRABAN, the Brazilian Federation of Banks, played a leading role in this joint initiative. Our regulations now serve as a benchmark and inspiration around the world in the fintech space.
Thank you, Carlos, for sharing some of the background. I think what's interesting to think about, so we talked about the massive amount of market, right? We have more smartphone penetration than people. We have a highly connected population. We're the second user of social media channels. So people are now expecting and comparing their latest bank experience to the latest Amazon experience. And I think that has driven the regulator, as I said in the beginning, to be quite audacious in a country that is highly high barrier of entry and has been historically an organized oligopoly in banking with massive credit spreads. We've seen this change, and we've seen Brazilians' creativity show through. Carlos, if somebody's thinking about, so from a foreign direct investment perspective, or really an opportunity to partner in Atlanta, talk a little bit about sort of this passporting or some of your role in bringing this cooperation. We have a lot of immigrant population, and we have people comparing products, as you said, Klarna, and things that have happened in Brazil for years now are common use in the US. What do you see the bridge? What do you see as an opportunity for collaboration? And what can people be thinking about if they're interested in saying, hey, could my fintech have a market in Brazil?
Well, I'm more acquainted with the market of Atlanta. So I think that between Brazil and Atlanta, we have a large space to build strong and lasting partnerships in fintech in a win-win situation. Note, Bianca, that 82% of Brazilian fintech companies still do not have any type of operation outside Brazil, according to a survey by Radar Fintech. Brazil already is a key player in Latin America and in the Southern Hemisphere, and Atlanta has become a fintech center in the United States and the world, and connections between both naturally tend to flourish and gain traction. In terms of Brazil, São Paulo is the city where most of our fintech startups come from, followed by Rio de Janeiro, Belo Horizonte, and Porto Alegre, among other cities. Many of the Atlanta-based fintech companies have important operations in Brazil and are strong competitors there. NCR is very relevant in the ATM space. FIS is very relevant in the credit card issuing and processing space. Fiserv company is very relevant in the merchant acquiring processing space, just to mention a few. There are also Brazilian companies and private equity funds with investments in Atlanta-based fintech firms, such as Merchant E, formerly known as Merchant E Solutions, and First Performance Global. There are other important Brazilian players in Georgia, more related to digital solution, technological innovation, artificial intelligence, digital transformation, and big data, like CI&T, MGV Innovation, Stefanini, Worfix, and Zoox, among others. Our industries can add mutual knowledge. Together, Brazil and Atlanta, we can deliver even more disruptive innovation and advanced technological solutions with better user experiences to all our customers in the world.
Thank you, Carlos, for sharing that. If somebody thinks about this collaboration and this opportunity, I couldn't agree more. I think that I'm a big proponent of what is happening in Brazil, and Talle has been building some content around people understanding the differences of doing business in Brazil. I think there's been a little bit of a resistance in terms of what has changed. Like if somebody has tried, maybe is a little bit burned in this conference and has said, I've tried, haven't really succeeded to do business. What makes this time the right time to try again? What makes the market ready for that disruption, other than obviously an accelerated state of digitalization that COVID-19 has brought us all towards facing?
Well, the present government really is changing the way our economy works in reality. It's becoming fully a market economy without state intervention. I think that that's very important. But there's also, and that's changing the landscape completely, I think. In reality, the engine of our growth is becoming the private sector. In the past, was the state investments, let's say, for our state companies mainly. But I think if you're an American company, this really is an interesting moment because as we speak, Brazil and the United States are negotiating a package, right, to promote investment and trade including in fintech. We're going to remove non-tariff barriers to trade, which are a greater obstacle to trade actually than tariff themselves. We're going to remove red tape, right, and have in place an agreement and a partnership to fight corruption.
I think that solves us in a very, that brings us to an end, Carlos, in a very positive note, in a note that if you haven't heard from my enthusiasm and Carlos' numerous accounts of tactical, tangible data points that show that Brazil is on the path to change, on the path to becoming hopefully one of the most thriving fintech ecosystems. We have the creativity, we have the numbers, we have a massive unbanked population that is craving for solutions around the world. So Carlos, I'm sure we will leave the context there for people to find out more about what you're doing in the embassy in Atlanta and how they can get in touch. And I wanted to thank you for being an ambassador of our country and bringing forward opportunities for all the markets to grow and us to bring better solutions to people, because I think that's what fintech is all about, is bringing better solutions to make fintech a weapon for inclusion, not for disparity and not prosperity in a country.
Oh, Bianca, thank you. Thank you very much for your kind words. If it weren't for this pandemic,
you would be in person having more fun than we're having now.
Our ambassador to the US would be in Atlanta, Georgia next week with a delegation, an important delegation of Brazilian businessmen, many of them from the fintech sector. And it would be really a great visit and a hallmark in our relations. But this visit is going to take place as soon as possible. And I'm in touch with the Georgian authorities to make it happen. But thank you, Bianca. Thank you, Fintechs all, for this opportunity, and cheers.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Ray, I'm going to bring you back here. Now we've gone from Brazil. Now we're going a little bit to another side of Latin America and to Colombia, and it's over to you. I hope it beats the excitement of our regulatory landscape, and you can tell some more stories about how fintech is growing.
Well, indeed, exciting times in Brazil and throughout Latin America. I think Latin America's time has come, and we're very excited and happy to be able to share it with the world and to be at Fintech South to present all of the opportunities that exist in our region. So now I want to invite Andres Gutierrez, who is the co-founder of Tu Paga, Te Paga y Tapsi. Hola, Andres, ¿cómo estás?
Hi, Ray. Doing great, and thanks for the invitation.
Well, it's great to have you here, and it's great to have a founder. So let's start off so we can have the audience know a little bit about you and about Te Paga and Tapsi.
Sure. I guess I'm what they call a serial entrepreneur. In 2012, I started my first startup, Ray, which is a taxi hailing app. This was the first time a taxi hailing app was launched in Colombia, South America. And Tapsi became the largest taxi hailing app in Colombia and second largest in Latin America. Just to give you an idea, we were transporting 1.5 million people per month. That's basically, I think, a quarter of the population of Atlanta every month. And Tapsi scaled to 15 cities in 3 countries prior to merging with Easy Taxi, which is actually a Brazilian transportation company, to become the largest transportation app in all Latin America.
Congratulations.
Thank
you. And what about Te Paga? What's the status of Te Paga?
That story is actually quite interesting. I think what we realized when we were in the taxi business was that 99% of the rides were paid in cash. And I'm talking about not just for Colombia. It's from Ciudad de Mexico in Mexico City to Asunción, right? We're paid in cash. And the main reason here was that the taxi drivers were unbanked. So we couldn't just copy and paste sort of the business models of Lyft and Uber. We need to figure out how we could sort of adapt this business model to Latin American reality. And the first alternative was to charge the taxi drivers a monthly subscription fee, right? So, and as we were doing this, we realized there was a bigger opportunity, even bigger than the taxi space. If we were able to bank these over 200,000 drivers in Colombia, over 1 million taxi drivers in the continent, we could become their primary bank. So we saw an opportunity to create a use case where a normal passenger can hail a ride, he can scan a QR code and transfer that money to the taxi drivers. And then I guess we stumbled into this bigger opportunity of mobile payments. And I think that story is quite interesting as well.
Well, I think it speaks to the ingenuity and fortitude of entrepreneurs like you. I think one of the things that is underappreciated about entrepreneurs that emerge from the region is the amount of obstacles that everyone has to overcome in order to succeed in these types of markets, which I think makes for some of the best entrepreneurs in the world, extremely robust. What, from your experience, what would you say to people listening to us about the entrepreneurial and the fintech experience from Colombia and through the greater Latin America that you've worked in?
I think to your point, there definitely is a lot of challenges. I think the first and foremost is access to capital. I think we can't shy away from the fact that Latin America, despite having double the economic size of Southeast Asia, received only 1/4 of the capital that Southeast Asia is receiving in terms of venture capital, right? And I think despite, I would say, the new banks or the Rappies, the rest of Latin America ecosystem has been fairly under invested in terms of venture capital. So I think you really have to be resourceful. You have to be creative enough to not spend because you don't have a big checkbook behind you. So I think it has helped actually to become more profitable sooner. I think once you don't have that access to capital, I think you just can't burn. You have to break even as soon as possible. So I think that has helped, I think, a vast amount of Latin American startups to be break even or to come close to break even. I think the second biggest challenge that we have in Latin America, and I think the General Counsel Ambassador was mentioning that Latin America has over 33 countries, right? And in terms of fintech, it's very different from Europe in a sense that if I get a payment license in Sweden, I can go to Norway, I can go to Denmark, I can launch in Italy. In Latin America, that's not the case. And I think that's why I don't see as many regional players, because with my payment license, I can't just open up my app in the Peru app store and then launch in Peru. No, I have to abide with local regulations. You have to make sure you're connected to the APIs of the banking infrastructure in Peru, which is totally different from Colombia. So I guess it's a testament to do more with less and be very smart that unfortunately you're not going to be able to scale to as many countries unless you really understand the regulatory environment and the infrastructure play.
So yeah, and I think you hit on one of the biggest challenges that we have in terms of promoting the region is the scalability issue and the need to go country by country, market by market. Any insights into how entrepreneurs can overcome or mitigate some of the challenges of doing this?
Yes, I think what we've been trying to do is try to anticipate the launch of our market by a year in advance. So we send a delegation of what we call sort of our legal representatives just to do the regulatory framework, just to talk to the local entities so that we can get a regulatory permission even 1 year or more advanced of the actual market launch. And I think that has helped really understand if a market is as attractive as it seems on paper, right? I think a second factor that we've done is we've really tried to play with the open banking theme. We've never launched into a country saying, I'm going to apply to be a bank, or I'm going to apply to be a mobile wallet bank, because we knew that was going to take us at least 16 to 20 months just to get that regulatory license. So what we sort of piggybacked is the license of third parties who are already operating in the countries, but just didn't have a mobile wallet play. So we decided to sort of do that sort of route of connecting with current entities in those countries, and we can sort of not bypass, but sort of leapfrog, I think, the regulatory sort of approvals, which could take, once again, from 1 to 2 years. And
so now you seem quite young, at least to me, in terms of that insight, and that a lot of times founders don't necessarily come into these efforts saying, let me get someone with regulatory experience to help me. Can you, because I'm always emphasizing that to founders that I connect with, is the importance of having that buttoned up, especially in the fintech space in the Americas for the reasons that you outlined. what advice or what counsel would you give to these founders out there or companies that are looking to go into Latin America space about how to organize this effort? Did you guys look at it by country size? How did you try to look strategically into your expansion in the region?
This was actually a very interesting approach. We actually brought some I think it wasn't an Emory, but it was an MBA from one of the colleges in the States. And we said, you know what, we need to build a framework to understand which of the 33 countries we're going to launch into. And I think we sort of factored in those variables that you were mentioning in terms of market size, in terms of competitors, but we also gave a huge sort of weight to the regulatory environment. So we started understanding which countries have a regulatory sandbox, which countries have pro-crypto laws, which countries have an open banking decree. So we started really putting a weight to the countries that had this sort of regulatory framework, which was more pro-fintech. And after doing this approach, we understood that Mexico, Peru, and Colombia were probably the three that, in our opinion, had the best regulatory frameworks, plus a big market size, plus a huge unbanked population, which is a sector we're trying to focus on. And I think after that, we reached out to the local associations. I think luckily in every country in Latin America, there's a fintech association. Colombia's fintech association is amazing. They represent 85% of all the fintechs in the country. They're already representing 150 fintech companies, which, considering the size of the 700, I think that Carlos Enrique mentioned in Brazil, that's a very decent size for Colombia. And I think through these channels of the local fintech associations, we're able to talk directly with the regulators. And in Colombia, we became the first sandbox approved fintech in the country. And I think it was because we spoke with the regulators. We explained that our vision was to go for the unbanked and underbanked consumers, which in Colombia account for over 50% of the population. And I think we really tried to make the regulatory affairs a competitive advantage of the Paga.
Now, yeah, I want to also just shout out to Colombia FinTech, and it is probably one of the most dynamic and fintech associations in the region, and it has, I think, the speed and development of its growth speaks to the opportunities that exist in the region, and in Colombia particularly, Colombia being such an important market in the region. So now what? What's the, as you look towards, we're here talking to Fintech South. We're talking at, really in the city of Atlanta, which is one of the most important payment hubs for the U.S. market. What's in store for you guys? How do you start mapping out next steps for you?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think when you look at sort of the fintech hubs, and is without doubt one of the most important, and you look at the companies, right, from Cabbage to what Greenlight's doing and Green Sky. I think there's a vast amount of people who are players doing not just sort of the B2B space, but the consumer as well. I think for Colombia and for fintechs in LATAM, we don't really have to look so much abroad as other industries have to do it, if you want to scale and if you want to become sort of a unicorn in that sense. I think luckily Colombia has a population of 50 million people, right? The unbanked population of Colombia is larger than the unbanked population of the States. So if you're thinking of building a product for unbanked or underbanked, I think it isn't the case of typically in e-commerce, you start in Colombia, then you go to Peru, and then you start figuring out, wow, I can't reach a total addressable market of 1 billion, so I have to go to the States. I think in Latin America, no. I think Latin America, we're very, very lucky that this is probably the final frontier of mobile payments, right? And when you look at it, we only have one unicorn, right? Or one company valued over 1 billion in this fintech space. And we're talking about a continent of over 33 countries, a total addressable market of $7 trillion in the financial space. And there's only one sort of large player. So I think we have been, hopefully mature enough to understand that we don't have to scale to 33 countries. You don't have to do what we did with Easy Taxi, which we ended up in 4 continents, just to realize we weren't the dominant player in 4 continents. And let's go back to the continent where we are strong. I think for us and for a lot of players in Latin America, it's going to be focus on building a product that really adapts to the Latin American consumers. And I think if you do that well, you're not going to have to need to go to other markets.
Well, let me just make a shout out for Latin America, for our audience that might be interested in the region. As Andres said, you're looking at about a $7 trillion GDP. You're looking at about 650 million people. You're looking at an enormous population of young millennials and Generation Z consumers. You're looking at smartphone adoption in urban areas, as Bianca had mentioned, over 100%, and really sort of penetrating deeply into even more rural areas. I believe Brazil remains Facebook's #2 market in the world. So this is a highly social, highly connected region, and unfortunately, looking at it from a developmental perspective, you're looking about roughly 50% of the region is under or unbanked. And this is a huge challenge. It's a huge problem, but it also is a huge opportunity, especially in the payment space, because as all these people are now walking around with these supercomputers in their smartphones, these are prime consumers who really need a lot of services and support. So they're really a great market to be developed. In terms of your relationship with the banks, how have the banks and your interconnectivity with the banks been, and what role have the banks played in the emergence of your business?
I think a very important one, and I think we realized this in our transportation business, that if we got a lot of enemies, we wouldn't be able to sort of change the industry like we wanted. And I think when you start into financial services, I think you really have to understand the incumbents. You have to play with them. You have to sort of complement them. And I think we really approached them in that way. We started talking with, I think 20 of the 25 financial institutions in Colombia, sort of presenting our solution to them. I think right now we're actually doing an API sort of white label for various financial institutions who realized until COVID that acquiring users, waiting for them to come into your office wasn't going to be the best approach in this now new digital world. So I think we're playing with them. We're complementing them quite well. And I think it's too early to tell where the relationship's going to go, but I think we are trying to cooperate more than compete, in a sense that we're not chasing after the same dollar. We're just trying to reach a coffee farmer in the Andes who's never been able to have credit in his life because he's always been paid in cash. But what happened if with Tipaga, he's finally getting paid with Tipaga? He can then go into a financial institution and then apply for a credit. And I think once you're talking about that, Ray, it's not even about market share anymore. It's just about this needs to happen in our continent. This has to be done right now. And I think we're a generation that has the energy, the power, and the skill to actually compete against financial inclusion. And I think that's our main goal.
Andres, it's been awesome. I mean, congratulations on your great success. You are a shining example of the quality of the entrepreneur that's emerging from the region. And it's very proud to see someone like yourself and the company that you built emerge and be on a stage like Fintech South. So congratulations and thank you for the time.
Thank you.
So I think that we're going to bring in Bianca so we could say goodbye to all of you.
Of course. Thank you so much, Ray. I hope this trip down south was interesting and pleasant to all of you, and it brought you closer to a little bit of the creativity and the political landscape and regulatory frameworks that are being put in place in order to make Latin America an even more exciting market that you should be watching for. So Ray, thank you for sharing this segment with me, and hopefully more information to come. We could spend an entire day talking about Latin America. And also, as a Canadian, can't forget Canada. I think that one of the main mentions is an opportunity for cross-collaboration. What can we learn from each other, and how can we make our companies scale up, as there's enough problems to solve in finance to change it?
Well, we will be talking actually on November 18th and 19th of Fintech Americas. We'll be having our second virtual conference, and it will be all about banking and fintech in the Americas. So if you want to learn more, visit fintechamerica's.co.co. And you can learn more, and we'll be happy to have you and host you and give you some more insights into what's happening in this very exciting region of the world. Bianca, it's been a great pleasure.
Pleasure talking to you as well, Ray. Stay tuned.
And enjoyed this very much. And so now I pass it on back to the Fintech South team. Thank you all very much for participating with us today.